Welcome to Salisbury University on the Air, a program highlighting the activities and the people of the campus. My name is Susan Purnell. When Dr. Janet Dudley Eshbach, the 8th president of Salisbury University, stepped down earlier this year after 18 years, she left tremendous legacy, including campus expansion, new buildings, and the creation of 2 new colleges, just to name a few of her accomplishments. One of the programs that she founded at SU in 2006 was the Center for International Education. Recently, the university honored her commitment to international studies by naming that center in her honor. With me this month to discuss that accolade and SU's many international academic programs is Dr. Brian Stiegler, Assistant Provost for International Education and Director of the Janet Dudley Eshbach Center for International Education. So good to meet you, Brian.
It's nice to meet you,
I can't believe we haven't met before.
Well, except for maybe in your store.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Store.
You are a customer. That's right. I
Right.
forgot that. So before we get talking about the new Center for International Education, let's talk a little bit about Dr. Janet Dudley Eshbach and her experiences abroad. Now, I know she got her doctorate at some college in Mexico.
Yeah. So the reason that the university decided to honor Dr. Janet upon her departure from the university by naming the center in her honor is because of the character that she brought to her presidency and the contributions that she made to internationalize the campus. And that came from her own past, her own background. So she did her doctoral degree at the Colegio de Mexico in Mexico City.
I'm glad you pronounced that, not me.
It's a famous private university in Mexico, and she did her PhD in Latin American literature. She studied an Argentine novelist and essayist and short story writer named Macedonio Fernandez, who wrote in the first half of the 20th century. And that experience of her crossing borders to do her graduate work really informed her adult life. And so as a president, as a university president, that was always forefront in her mind. And so she made strategic decisions, and she made investments, and out of it came the Center for International Education, and some of the great advances that were made during her presidency.
Now, in 2010, so she was 10 years into her presidency, I think they started a new scholarship for studying abroad. Tell me a little bit about that.
So she, Dr. Janet very specifically had her transformative experience in Latin America, and her identity is really wrapped up in her bilingualness in Spanish and English. So she wanted to open up the opportunity for other Marylanders, for other Americans to follow in her footsteps. And so she created a scholarship in 2010 to fund students who wanted to study in Latin America, particularly Spanish, and we've been given the scholarship ever since. And really that came from her own past. She was a Marylander. She was a Baltimore girl who really spread her wings, and Latin America opened up the world to her. So that's what she's trying to do with her new scholarship. Well, it's not new anymore, actually. It's
10 years old, I know. Yeah. And didn't someone else in her family add to that scholarship?
There have been dozens of people since then who have continued to make donations, and so I think she's begun something that will last long after.
So now, how many students are actually studying abroad?
It depends on the year. This past year we had just over 300 students studying abroad. We send students on really 2 types of programs. We have what we call the Global Seminar Program. These are winter term in the month of January and summer term programs led by a Salisbury University faculty member. That might be 2 or 3 weeks long, this program, and the students will take a course and earn credits. And these global seminars, we send maybe 200 students a year, 200 plus students a year. And then in addition to the global seminar, we run about 15 of those a year, depending on the year. And then in addition, we send students abroad for full semesters or academic years. And they study through our partnerships around the world, but they also intern as well. And we send anywhere from 50 to 75 to 100 students a year on that kind of experience.
So that number has increased, I guess, dramatically since she became president.
Dramatically. Back in '01, we were sending less than 100 students, and And we have sent as many as about 415 in a year just a few years ago, and we're back down again into the 300s now. But either way, we've tripled, even quadrupled at moments where we were at the beginning of her presidency.
So how many credits then are earned internationally a year?
It's a good question. It's not something that we count in that sense. Those global seminars tend to generate 3 to 4 credits a piece, and again, we have about 200 plus students that do those programs. And the internships and the semester-based study abroad generate full-time credit hours, so 12 to 16 hours for a full semester, which means that students can bring their financial aid packages with them.
Oh, that's great.
They make progress towards degree, either in their majors or in their minors, or in electives that get them towards their 120 credits they need for graduation. So it's meant as an embedded part of their undergraduate academic career. It's not a co-curricular experience. It's meant to be part of their career.
Brian, tell me about some of the things that they're actually studying abroad.
Susan, it's really amazing some of the things that the kids do. For example, we have a really special partnership with a US-based organization called the School for Field Studies. They are an elite organization that does field-based research for undergraduates in environmental studies and biology. And we have a student in Cambodia this semester, for example, studying environmental studies within the Cambodian context. We had a student this past summer. We've had several students in the Himalayas of Bhutan doing environmental related research. Fascinating what the students do at School for Field Studies. We have a partnership with an organization called Global Experiences. They're based out of Annapolis, and they were co-founded by an SU alum years ago, and it's called Global Experiences, and they place our students in student internships around the world. And so we've had students interning in Sydney, Australia, in sports medicine and exercise science. We've had students interning in Dublin, in Ireland, in journalism and event planning, things that come out of communication arts. We've had students interning in Florence, Italy, in these fields. So really just
That's where I'd like to go.
It's a remarkable opportunity, especially the internships and the research experiences for young people to really make this transition into the next part of their professional life. So students really study all kinds of fields, and they do traditional study in the classroom, but they also do a lot of this experiential learning while they're abroad.
And if you spend a semester abroad, all your credits are then immediately transferred back? No problem there.
So, in fact, there are some programs that we have that the students transfer their credits back, but other programs are run the way in the university we call them co-op programs, that the students earn credits that are ours to begin with. Our students in Spain, for example, on the coast of the Mediterranean there, they earn our Spanish credits. They're not transferred anywhere. They're our credits. They're just delivered in Spain. We have an intensive semester in France, that's French language study in the city of Lyon. Same thing. These internships, those are Salisbury University credits. So sometimes they transfer, but sometimes they're our own credits to begin with. But in all cases, the students post those credits towards their degree, either toward their major, for their minor, for general education credits, or for electives for graduation. So we always want it to be part of an integrated part of completing their degree, so they can graduate in 4 years and move on.
Now, are you talking with any other countries or any other universities about other programs on the horizon?
When Dr. Janet arrived, we really were managing no partnerships of our own as a university that provided opportunities for students to do semester-based study abroad. We now have about a dozen, plus these best partnerships with Global Experiences and the School for Field Studies. So altogether about 14 programs, but we're looking at more. We have an opportunity in Germany. We don't have a program in Germany right now, so we're exploring that. We have a really nice lead in Japan. We don't have a Japan program right now. So there are some really interesting opportunities that are yet to come. The big places that we would like to continue to develop really are, we don't have a good opportunity in Africa, in the entire continent of Africa. So our environmental studies and geosciences program has a field station there that we're beginning to try to bring along in Kenya.
In Kenya.
That is, again, is based on water management, forestry, animal husbandry, environmental sort of issues. So we're trying to bring that along a little bit. We want to open up opportunities for students in Africa. We have the potential for a partnership in Ghana, in West Africa, that we're really very interested in pursuing. And the other big hole right now in our portfolio is in India. Certainly a major economy and the largest democracy in the world. And so we're cautiously optimistic about an opportunity in India. We have just recently signed an agreement with an organization that's going to allow our students to study Indian languages, specifically strategic languages throughout India.
Study them here or study them
in
there?
India.
In India.
In India.
Do we teach any Indian languages?
Not on the university campus. And again, that's part of what we're trying to do as well with our global partnerships is to expand our curriculum. So one of the reasons we're looking so carefully at Germany is that we have lower level German language, for example, at the university. But for a student who wants to continue their studies in Germany, we want to partner with an organization that will allow them to do that. We probably aren't going to have enough students who want to study a strategic, to study Bengali, for example, or Hindi, or even Sanskrit. But we have individual students who want to do that. So through partnership, we're working on those opportunities as well.
Does anybody go to China?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a very active partnership in China. Our oldest and strongest partnership in China is in our sister state, Maryland, and in the state of Anhui province. Have been sister states through Sister Cities International since really right after the return of Richard Nixon.
I had no idea.
And the opening of China. It's coming up on 40 years as sister state partnership. And Salisbury University is a leader in Maryland higher education there, and we have a partnership with a university called Anqing Normal University. It's an institution very similar to Salisbury, a teacher's college sort of heritage, but much bigger and more comprehensive now. And we send students to study there. We're sending alumni to teach English there. We're taking students from their university with us, so we're very active in China.
It's so fascinating. I understand you were recently recognized by the Institute for International Education. What was that all about?
So back in for the academic year 2014-15 is when we got up over 400 study abroad students. And so the Institute for International Education is as an organization is outsourced by the U.S. Department of State and the U.S. Department of Education to track global mobility in higher education in the United States. So how many American students are studying abroad, how many international students are studying in American universities, these sorts of things. So they publish a top 40 list every year based on the Carnegie classification of the universities. So we're a master's university at Salisbury University. So in that year, in 2016, when the numbers came out for 2014-15, we made that top 40 list. And that's really a remarkable thing to do, because on that master's list, it's a top 40 list. Probably 2/3 of the universities are privates, which means they cost a whole lot more for students. Right. And so really that particular year, we were probably amongst the top 10 public master's universities in the country for the number of students who studied abroad. Now we've fallen back off that list because it's been hard for us to maintain that volume, but we know we've made it there. And so we expect to be back there again, and we'd like to be on that list every year. That's an aspiration for us, and there's no reason we can't be. We're pretty confident in that.
That's exceptional. Let's talk now about people coming from abroad to here. Tell me how that has grown, the international students here.
Yeah, so from the beginning, we want to be on that top 40 list for study abroad. But as a public comprehensive, if we're at about 25% participation rates, we'll be on that top 40 list for study abroad participation every year. But what that means as a public comprehensive university is the majority of our students are not going to have a chance to study abroad for any variety of reasons. We're a complex organization. We have a lot of different students who are in different stages of their lives, different kinds of people. But what we want as a public university is that Marylanders get a chance to study at Salisbury, enter the workforce, enter our Maryland citizenry with global competencies and with a global outlook. And so it's not enough to send students abroad, we also have to internationalize our campus. And so as Salisbury University grew during the beginning of Dr. Janet's presidency, our international student population didn't grow. So in fact, we became a less diverse place when it came to the number of international students from around the world as a percentage of our
Any
makeup.
reason?
Only because we weren't working at it very hard.
Okay.
So beginning in about 2010, we started working at it. And we created an English Language Institute that I'd like to talk more about.
Yeah.
And that has radically transformed our ability to attract students from around the world. And so because we're in Maryland, and Maryland is a diverse state, and we're close to Washington, D.C. and the Metroplex there, we have a certain percentage of our student body that's going to be international, that will come from the Western Shore. It's maybe 50 or 60 students enrolled at any time. So that's where we always were. So between 2010 and today, we've tripled that number. Again, we got up to over 200 back in that same time, about 2014-15, and we've fallen back a little bit from that. But we have about 180 international students now, and they come from about 30 different countries. But more importantly than the diversity is that they're coming from places where we are building partnerships. We have a really active partnership, for example, this one I was discussing in Anqing, in Anhui province, China. We have a very active partnership with a community college in Tokyo, Japan, and we get transfer students from there. We have a very active partnership that's new. We began working with them just about 3 years ago, and their first students began coming to us last year in Yangon, Myanmar, as Myanmar sort of opened up. We have a really nice new partnership there. So we're building really very specific partnerships to try to make sure that we have students from around the world that are part of the classroom right here in Salisbury. So all students who come to Salisbury University can have that kind of global exposure.
So you were giving credit to the English Language Institute.
Yeah.
When was that formed? And tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so the English Language Institute was formed in 2010. American universities really, back in the 1970s and 80s, really began to build these. The University of Delaware has a very old one that dates from that time, as does University of Maryland, as does Towson University. So we were a little late in that world. It's at the university. It's at the university. We teach in classrooms at the university. We have a teaching faculty who has been with us, a main teaching faculty who's been with us since the beginning. And the idea is that as a university, we sponsor visas to students to come from around the world to study with us. And in order to qualify for a student visa, you have to be able to be enrolled in a full-time program. So because we're an American university, students have to demonstrate English competency to enter our programs. And we weren't able to bring students on a visa who didn't have already the English competency. So the English Language Institute allows us to sponsor that visa, bring that student to study English as a full-time student. It's a whole curriculum. They take 6 courses a semester.
All in
full-time, all in English, and writing and speaking and reading, the 4 skills. And then we have a summer program as well. And many community members here will recognize and are now kind of come to expect the groups that we have in the summer. We have big groups of Chinese students, big groups of Spanish students from Spain. We have a big partner in southern Spain, the University of Malaga. They're sending us big groups of students in the summer. And so these students, they're studying abroad with us, right? And then many of them, we've had over 1,000 students in the last 9 years come through the English Language Institute. Over 100, about 125 of them now have moved into an academic program. And so because 90% of the world's population doesn't speak English as a native language, the ability to sponsor visas and bring students into Salisbury to work on their English has really opened up a lot of opportunity for us.
I would think so. Now, these students that come over here from other countries, do they have an opportunity to go other places other than just remaining in Salisbury? Do you have programs for them to see a little bit of the U.S.?
Well, I think there's sort of 2 parts to that.
Okay.
One thing that's really very interesting just about the development of Salisbury is that over this same period of time, for example, the Bay Runner company was created, which connects us not only to BWI, which is how we tend to think of it, but it also connects us to Amtrak. And so people in Salisbury don't realize that you can book an Amtrak ticket right from Salisbury to Boston. And the first track is just on Riverside Drive. And that first train is the Bay Runner shuttle. And so our students use that Bay Runner shuttle. And they move about the country. The other really very exciting development that happened back in like the 2013-14 was the New York Tiger bus, which a lot of people are now in our region have become familiar with. It runs right from downtown Manhattan, and it stops in Wilmington, it stops in Salisbury, and it stops in Norfolk, and that's it. Direct service right to Manhattan. And it's run by actually a Chinese American.
I did not know that. Where do they pick up here? I had no idea.
For many years, they picked up right outside of Pat's Pizzeria. Now they're picking up out by Buffalo Wild Wings, on the north side of town. And so our students use these public transportation to go everywhere. The international students tend to love to go to Las Vegas. They love to go to Niagara Falls. They love to go to Disney World. Right. So they do these things while they're with us. In the summertime, we do this programming for them because they're not here long enough. So we take students to New York, we take students to Washington, D.C., and we're really ideally located in the United States for students to come and study abroad with us and really get to know some of the famous cities of the East Coast.
We really are. We're in a great location,
great
for
location
that. That's for sure. I mean, you can be in New York City in 5 hours.
Absolutely.
That's not a lot.
And you know, so often people, again, our community members who live here, they think that we're maybe isolated from the big cities, but only in comparison. When you're in China or in Myanmar or in Spain, and you look at the map, we are right next to all those places, and we are.
We really are,
and it's very easy for the students to see these things, and
That's
so
really true.
it becomes a wonderfully enriching program for the international.
What do you do here for them in terms of teaching them about our traditions? Do you have any kind of programs like that?
We have a program that's run from our International Student and Scholar Services Office in the center that's called the Buddy Program. And we ask American students who are so inclined to be friends with an international student, and we structure it a little bit for them. And we have some funding to help them to have coffee together and that sort of thing. And they begin to help these international students to
wonderful
adjust
idea.
to life. The other thing that we've been doing in a partnership with Salisbury Housing, Blair Rainier, is we've created a residency in Seagull Village, which is located right behind Trax Deli and University Park, where we have the international students living there. We have a resident assistant who's an American living there. We have Americans who are inclined to this sort of thing there. Because really, in addition to going to Niagara Falls in New York, these things that you mentioned, there's very simple things about diet, about eating, about what to do on a Friday night, about how to study, about missing your mom. You know, these things are really very important for a student who's studying abroad with us. And so the opportunity for our Maryland students to be part of this and to share in this experience with these foreign students, this is really the value in what we do.
And it's given back to them, I'm sure, in spades.
And you know, the English Language Institute has been important in teaching this to our campus community as well. Students who are anybody who's acquiring a second language, it's a process. And so even when one finishes the English Language Institute or has a TOEFL score that's appropriate, they're still not native speakers of English.
Right.
And so they might speak English with an accent. Their writing might not be as a native would be. But these international students and our study abroad students from Maryland also who go abroad, they tend to be very hard workers. And so what at the beginning was maybe a little bit of apprehension among our faculty that we might have students who don't have the English to be successful. What the faculty has found is that they're very hardworking, and so whatever deficiencies they might have in language, even after they've studied the language more, they make up for in spades by their work ethic and their study skills and the gifts that they bring with them. But this is why that buddy program is important as well. Is that the foreign students they work very hard to be successful. But we don't want them isolated.
Right.
And so it's also important to have coffee and to go have pancakes and to go bowling.
Now, I also understand that Dr. Janet started a program for international faculty. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
While we've really improved the study abroad participation numbers over the last decade and a half, and the international student numbers as well, we did not have a tool in our toolkit to bring international faculty. The U.S. Department of State runs a program called the J-1 Exchange Visitor Program. It's a certain type of visa. And we were never qualified, we never applied to do it. So back in about the same time, about 2011, 2012, we became authorized to bring the J-1 visa. So I want to say in the decade, it doesn't really matter how far you go back. I mean, go back as far as you want. We maybe have brought 1 or 2 or 3 scholars from around the world to be in residence with us here in Salisbury before 2012. Since 2012, we've brought 60. And so at any given time, right now, we have about 6 scholars. And we have a small house on campus where they can stay. And it's like a 3-bedroom cottage. We often, matter of fact, for the last 3 or 4 years, we've always had too many visiting scholars for that space, and so then we have to find additional housing for them. We have had performing artists come and be in residence. Right now, we have a couple Brazilians, postgraduate students, younger people who are doing research with our geosciences department. We have a scholar who's has some funding from Mitzi Purdue and her community foundation because he's writing a book on family-owned businesses. And he's from India, and he's in residency with us. We have a scholar in communication arts from Sri Lanka. And these faculty come to our campus. They sometimes teach, they sometimes lecture, they sometimes perform, they sometimes are involved in joint research projects. But they bring to us an internationalness that we simply didn't have before because we didn't have the tools to do it. And now it really has become an important part of really the makeup of different academic departments.
Now, how about SU faculty itself, not the international, but how do they participate in the study abroad program?
When you're with students abroad, it's not that you're lecturing in the classroom for 2 hours, it's that you're teaching them in the field. You're with them in the classroom, you're with them in the train station, you're with them in the airport and in the lobby of the hotel, and you're helping them to interpret the reality around them through your disciplinary lens. So we have a faculty member like Dr. Ann Bars in biology who has taken students to the coral reefs off the coast of Honduras for almost 20 years now. And that program that they began as a snorkeling program. Now all the students do that have to be scuba certified. They're diving 50, 70, 80 feet onto these coral reefs. This is really a profound experience for the students, and it's 100% dependent on the faculty. What a student will learn in a biology program and off the coast of Honduras is different than what they'll learn in an international accounting class in France, for example, which is different than what you'll learn in a communications class in Scotland or a Spanish class in Argentina. And the faculty members are doing this. So back when Dr. Janet first arrived, we had about 9 or 10 faculty doing that. We had some heritage professors who were doing this, really going back into the 70s and 80s, but it was very few. And now we have over 30 faculty who are engaging on a regular basis in this work. And it's
really
part
remarkable. Of their regular coursework?
It happens always in winter term or in summer term, so it's sort of outside of the regular semester. But
that's good about those terms.
Yeah, for the students.
That small, right.
Exactly.
Small window.
But again, some of the courses are, for example, in the business school, those courses really feed their own majors and the business majors. There are other programs. The biology department, for example, runs a global seminar in Costa Rica that really is meant as a general education course for all kinds of students. There's an art course in digital photography that takes place in London every winter term, and that is a general education course. And so all kinds of students take advantage of it as part of their curriculum. And so in that sense, it's very mainstream and part of the academic work. And we completely depend on the faculty to do this. In addition, these things like the internships that we talked about, every student who's doing one of those internships is tied back to a faculty member here on campus. And so the faculty has been absolutely central to the study abroad process. The faculty have also invited a lot of the foreign scholars that have come. And so again, that enrichment that happens in the academic departments when we can have a foreign scholar in residence is because of the leadership of the faculty. And the faculty have always been involved in their own research abroad. They present in conference papers around the world. They do their research all around the world. We have a very academically, globally mobile faculty engaged around the world. And that hasn't changed, and it's gotten to be increasingly so. But these programs that really touch students directly also are completely dependent on the faculty.
What other kinds of services does now I'm going to get this right, the Janet Dudley Eshbach Center for International Education, I got it, Janet. What else do they do?
So every international student, for example, who comes, or every one of these global faculty members who comes and enriches our campus community, they all have to go through a visa process. So our International Student and Scholar Services Office, the way that the U.S. government does this, both through the U.S. Department of State for the J-1 visa program and the USCIS, Customs and Immigration Services, is with all American universities, is we have an employee who is designated by the government to produce the paperwork that generates these visas for the students.
Every country
from all over the world.
No matter if you're from England or France or...
All over the world.
Okay.
And so we have staff members who do this, and there's a lot of paperwork involved in helping students to cross borders. The same thing is true of our students who go abroad. If you're going to spend a semester in Spain and study, there's a visa process involved in that. And so all this intricacy of crossing borders that is actually quite complicated. The center provides a lot of support for that. The faculty who do these global seminars, while we depend on the faculty to do that teaching in the field, they're quite complicated to run because we have hotel rooms we have to purchase, we have entrances into museums, we have transportation companies. All this work has to get done. It's all done in a foreign currency. Bills have to be paid around the world and moved by electronic wire transfer. All this happens in the Center for International Education. It's not as easy to cross borders as it appears to be, and there's a lot of bureaucracy that has to happen so that students can have these experiences and faculty can have these experiences. And really our growth has been because Dr. Janet invested in the existence of the Center to begin with. Is in order to do this kind of work so that the international experiences can happen. And our ability to grow bigger will also be, and is being curtailed by that same infrastructure. It just takes a lot of effort to get this work done. And so as we can grow the center, we will continue to grow the number of international students on campus, the number of international faculty visiting us, and the number of Marylanders who can get abroad.
What would you say is the most important reason to study abroad?
We are living a moment of isolationism. We're living a moment of walls and of suspicions of foreigners. This is part of the zeitgeist of our age.
There's definitely a nationalist movement.
It's not unique to the United States. And so what is important is that in American higher education, about 60% of American students who do four-year college degrees, they do it at public comprehensive regionals like Salisbury universities. They don't do them at the elite Ivy League schools. They don't do them at the major research universities. They do them at the public comprehensive. This is the backbone of American higher education. And so our ability to expose U.S. citizens to the world so that as they graduate and become the leadership as members of our democracy and as citizens, as members of the workforce, the more capacity that they have to understand others, to cross borders, to understand the value in crossing borders, to have relationships with people from other cultures, other language groups, other religious groups. This has never been more important as it is right now. And Dr. Janet was always committed to that vision, which is again why the university has honored her by naming the center after her. But the center, my staff at the Center for International Education is committed to this vision and works tirelessly. This way our faculty is committed to this. And it really has never been more important.
And I think if this is done, more often, we'll just have a much greater international understanding. So I think what you're doing is really important, and what Janet has left as a legacy is going to have a huge impact on the world.
And you've summarized it beautifully. There's a philosopher and an essayist and a theorist named Martha Nussbaum who writes that it becomes much more difficult to do violence to people whom you know personally.
Right.
And this is what you talk about.
I think
it's when it becomes personal.
Yes, that's the lesson I learned.
That the walls start to come down. And for that reason, borders have to be crossed.
Yes.
And in order for borders to be crossed, work has to get done. And this is what the Center for International Education is about at Salisbury University, and this is what Dr. Janet's legacy is.
Right.
And we're very thankful to her and for that time.
We
and
are.
we hope for more growth in the future.
And I'm sure we'll see it. Thank you so much, Brian, for being here.
Thank you for having me. Susan.
Very eye-opening to me.
Thank you.
And now here's a look at some of the activities happening on the campus in November. I'd like to thank my guest, Dr. Brian Stiegler, SU Assistant Provost for International Education and Director of the Janet Dudley Eshbach Center for International Education. It's so wonderful that U.S. students have the opportunity to experience other cultures and that students from other countries have the chance to see what SU has to offer. I'm Susan Purnell, and this has been Salisbury University on the Air. Thank you for watching.